I sat across from my sister in the lawyer's office when she signed the papers that transferred my inheritance into her name. She didn't even look at me. She just smirked and said, "Dad wanted you to have it someday, but not now. You're not stable enough. I'll manage it until you prove yourself." I felt my throat close. It was my father's last gift to me, the one thing he said would help me build the life he never got to finish. And she took it with a casual flick of her pen. The lawyer slid the newly signed documents toward her, then looked at me with an expression that said he knew something was wrong. But he said nothing. My name is Talia Reese, and in that moment I realized my sister never planned to share anything. Not love, not responsibility, and definitely not the inheritance meant for me. My hands trembled as I watched Ariana gather her designer purse. This couldn't be legal. This couldn't be right. But nobody was stopping her. The office felt suffocating, the air thick with betrayal and expensive leather furniture polish. As soon as we stepped outside, my sister turned to me with that familiar look of superiority. The afternoon sun cast sharp shadows across her perfectly made-up face. "You should actually thank me. You'd waste it." My heart pounded hard against my ribs. It was Dad's wish that I... "No," she cut me off sharply. "Dad never trusted you with money. You're too emotional. Too soft. I'm protecting the family legacy." Then she got into her sleek black car and drove off like she'd just done me a favor. I stood on the sidewalk, frozen. Cars passed by. People walked around me. But I couldn't move. The weight of what just happened pressed down on my chest like concrete blocks. 23 years of being second best to Ariana crashed over me all at once. Dad had promised me this inheritance personally. He sat me down 3 months before he died and told me it was mine. He said I deserved security after everything I'd been through. The divorce. The job I'd lost during the pandemic. The medical bills from my emergency surgery last year. Now it was gone. Taken by someone who was supposed to love me. I walked home numb, replaying her words over and over. To the world, Ariana was the responsible one with a stable corporate job and polished life. She worked in finance, wore expensive suits, and always knew the right people. To my father, I was the daughter with empathy, with creativity, with heart, qualities Ariana always mocked as weakness. I kept hearing Dad saying those words during our last real conversation. "Talia, softness isn't failure. Your heart will take you further than money ever will." He'd squeezed my hand when he said it, his grip weaker than I remembered. He'd been sitting in his favorite chair by the window, the one where he'd read to me as a child. But now the money was gone. The security he wanted me to have had vanished with Ariana's signature. I climbed the stairs to my tiny apartment, the one I could barely afford on my art teacher salary. The walls felt closer than usual. Paint was peeling in the corner by the bathroom. The radiator clanked and hissed. I collapsed on my second-hand couch and stared at the ceiling. How did she convince the lawyer? What paperwork did she forge? Nothing made sense. Dad had been clear with me. Crystal clear. Back home, I remembered Dad's old desk in my storage closet. I'd kept it after clearing out his house, despite Ariana saying I was being sentimental over junk. The desk was heavy oak, scarred with decades of use. I pulled open the locked bottom drawer with the key Dad gave me years ago. He'd pressed it into my palm during one of his last good days. "Keep this safe," he'd whispered. "You'll know when you need it." Inside were folders of documents, yellowed with age. Birth certificates, old tax returns, my parents' marriage license. And then I found it. A draft of his will with instructions written in his careful handwriting. My name was circled in blue ink. Next to it, Dad had written, "For Talia only. Not to be redirected under any circumstances." A chill ran through me. The date on this document was from 2 months before he died. Ariana wasn't protecting anything. She was stealing. My hands shook as I photographed every page with my phone. This changed everything. This was proof of Dad's real wishes. I read through the document 3 more times, making sure I understood what I was seeing. Dad had been clear. Crystal clear. He'd even underlined my name twice. I returned to the lawyer's office the next morning without calling ahead. The receptionist seemed surprised to see me, her eyebrows raising slightly. "Ms. Reese, do you have an appointment?" But she let me wait in the lobby anyway. The chairs were uncomfortable, designed more for appearance than comfort. I clutched the folder of documents against my chest. When Mr. Patterson finally came out, he looked uneasy. His tie was slightly crooked, like he'd been pulling at it. I wasn't comfortable with what happened yesterday, he admitted quietly once we were in his office. His shoulders sagged like he'd been carrying guilt all night. Your sister was very insistent. She had documents that seemed legitimate. But something felt off. When I showed him my father's handwritten draft, he froze. His face went pale as he studied each page, his fingers trembling slightly. He pulled reading glasses from his pocket and examined the handwriting closely. This changes everything, he whispered. He explained that he needed to verify its authenticity through a handwriting expert, and he couldn't make any promises yet. But his eyes told me he already believed it was real. He asked me to leave the documents with him, promising to call within 48 hours. I insisted on keeping the originals and giving him copies instead. I wasn't trusting anyone anymore. Later that afternoon, my aunt called me out of the blue. We hadn't spoken much since Dad's funeral. Aunt Helen was my father's younger sister, the family member who'd always treated me kindly. Talia, honey, I heard Ariana's putting money into some business venture? Her voice carried concern I wasn't expecting. My stomach dropped. What kind of business? Some boutique downtown. She's been posting about it non-stop on social media. Designer clothes, expensive location, the whole works. Didn't you know? My aunt sounded confused, like I should have been involved in these decisions. I thanked her and hung up quickly. Ariana had always wanted to start her own luxury clothing boutique, but she never had the capital. She'd complained about it for years at family dinners, talking about her vision for a high-end shopping experience. Now suddenly she had funding? She hadn't taken my inheritance to protect anything. She took it to fund herself. Rage burned in my chest, hotter than anything I'd felt before. This wasn't about my stability or Dad's wishes. This was theft, plain and simple. She'd looked me in the eye, lied about protecting our father's legacy, and then immediately spent the money on her own dreams. I went to my mother's house that evening to talk things through. I needed to know if she knew what Ariana had done. Maybe she could help me fix this. Maybe she'd be outraged on my behalf. But before I could knock on the familiar blue door, I heard voices inside through the open window. The evening was warm and Mom always kept windows open for the breeze. Ariana's voice carried clearly. She won't do anything. She never does. She's too scared to fight me. Remember when I took credit for her art project in high school? She didn't even tell the teacher. Then my mother's voice. You deserve the money more anyway. Talia was always the one messing things up. Remember that boyfriend who left her? That job she quit? She's never been able to hold on to anything good. I backed away from the door, my breath coming in short gasps. They weren't just letting Ariana take my inheritance. They believed I didn't deserve it. My own mother thought I was a failure. Every mistake I'd ever made was being used to justify stealing from me. I walked back to my car in a daze. The betrayal cut deeper than anything Ariana had done. At least with my sister I expected cruelty. We'd competed since childhood. But Mom? She was supposed to love me unconditionally. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept checking my phone, waiting for the lawyer to call. Every notification made my heart jump. I paced my small apartment, making tea I didn't drink, starting books I couldn't focus on. The hours crawled by painfully. Finally, around 10 in the morning, an email came through from Mr. Patterson's office. The subject line read, "Urgent. Please come in tomorrow morning." No details. No context. Just those 5 words that made my pulse race. I read the email a dozen times, trying to find hidden meaning in the sparse text. I spent the entire day wondering what he'd found. Had the handwriting been verified? Was there more to Dad's will than even I knew? Or was this bad news? Had Ariana somehow covered her tracks? Maybe she'd filed additional paperwork. Maybe her lawyers were better than mine. I barely slept that night either. When I did drift off, I dreamed of Dad sitting at his desk, writing my name over and over in that careful blue ink. I woke up at dawn with my heart pounding, knowing that today would change everything one way or another. I chose my clothes carefully, not too casual, not trying too hard. I wanted to look put together, stable, responsible. The next morning, Mr. Patterson's voice was urgent when I entered his office. "Talia, please sit down. We have a lot to discuss." His demeanor was completely different from 2 days ago. There was energy in his movements, a kind of controlled excitement. "The draft you brought is legitimate. Our handwriting expert confirmed it matches your father's writing perfectly. Not just similar, identical down to the smallest details. And there's more. Your father made one final amendment before he passed that nobody knew about. He slid a paper across the desk. My hands shook as I picked it up. The header read Marcus Reese Private Trust Confidential. My inheritance wasn't the only thing Dad had left me. There was something else. Something my sister didn't know existed. Your father created a separate trust fund 8 years ago, Mr. Patterson explained, leaning forward. He never mentioned it to anyone except me. It was his backup plan, he said. In case anything happened to his primary will or if there were disputes. I stared at the numbers on the paper, unable to process what I was seeing. The amount made my head spin. Mr. Patterson continued explaining, his words coming faster now. This second account has been gaining interest for years. It's completely separate from the inheritance your sister accessed. Protected. Hidden. Managed by a separate trustee. And it was meant solely for you. The amount was staggering. More than the inheritance Ariana had stolen. Nearly double, in fact. My father had been planning for my security all along in ways I never imagined. He'd been protecting me even after death. Your sister can't access it. She doesn't even know it exists, the lawyer said. And legally she can't touch what was originally yours either now that this draft has surfaced. We have grounds to reverse the transfer completely. The evidence is overwhelming. I felt my entire world shift beneath me. For days I'd felt powerless, robbed, betrayed, like a victim with no options. Now suddenly I had more than options. I had power. Control. Authority. The lawyer handed me papers to sign, authorizing him to begin legal proceedings against Ariana for fraudulent transfer. My hand didn't shake when I signed them. Not even slightly. For the first time in my life, the leverage was mine. I wasn't the soft sister anymore. I wasn't the one who needed protecting. That evening, Ariana texted me, "Don't go crying to anyone about yesterday. You'll just embarrass yourself. This is what's best for the family." Dad would have wanted us to be united, not fighting over money like it's the most important thing. The arrogance in her words was breathtaking. The hypocrisy even more so. She'd stolen my inheritance and now she was lecturing me about family unity? I smiled for the first time in days. She had no idea what was coming. She thought she'd won, that I'd accepted defeat like I always did when we were kids. When she got the lead in the school play. When she got Mom's attention. When she got praised for achievements while mine were overlooked. But those days were over. I typed back a simple response. Thanks for the advice. Nothing more. Let her think I'd given up. Let her believe I was still the pushover sister who never fought back. I pictured her reading my message, feeling satisfied, probably showing it to our mother as proof that I'd accepted my place. She'd spend Dad's money freely now, believing she'd gotten away with it. The boutique plans would accelerate. She'd sign more contracts. Dig herself deeper. The thought of her face when she learned the truth made me almost giddy. I wasn't being cruel. I was being strategic, just like she taught me to be over 23 years of competition. My mother came by my apartment the next day, unannounced as usual. She walked in without waiting for me to invite her inside, using her entitled knock-and-enter approach that had always irritated me. "Talia, you need to let this inheritance thing go. Ariana has more responsibilities than you. She has a career to think about, a reputation to maintain." She said it like my life was temporary, like I was a placeholder until Ariana finished using everything that should have been mine. "You're single. You don't need that kind of money yet. When you settle down, meet someone, maybe have a family, then we can revisit this." "Maybe then what, Mom?" I interrupted. "Maybe then I'll deserve basic respect? Maybe then you'll treat me like an actual daughter instead of Ariana's backup plan." My voice was calm but firm. She looked surprised. I never talked back. I never challenged her. For 23 years I'd absorbed her favoritism in silence. "Don't be dramatic," she said, waving her hand dismissively. "This is about family. About doing what's right for everyone." I looked her in the eye. "You'll regret underestimating me." The words came out steady, certain. She left shortly after, uncomfortable with this new version of me who spoke up and pushed back. A week passed. Mr. Patterson called to tell me he'd filed the initial paperwork. The legal wheels were turning slowly, but they were turning. Meanwhile, Ariana started spending money lavishly. She must have felt invincible now. I watched her social media posts carefully. New designer clothes with price tags visible in photos. Expensive furniture for her apartment. A leather couch that cost more than 3 months of my rent. Photos from costly restaurants downtown, bottles of wine that cost hundreds of dollars. She was burning through cash like it would never run out. What she didn't know was that Mr. Patterson had frozen the main inheritance account pending investigation. The separate lawyer I'd hired had made sure of it through emergency court order. One morning, mid-shopping spree, according to her Instagram story, her card stopped working. My phone rang 20 minutes later. Ariana was screaming so loud I had to hold the phone away from my ear. "What did you do? My card's been declined. This is insane." I was in the middle of paying for custom curtains. I kept my voice calm and steady. "You said I didn't deserve the money. Let's see if you do." Then I hung up. She called back immediately. I didn't answer. Mom decided to host a family dinner 2 weeks later, probably hoping to force me and Ariana to make peace. She did this whenever there was family conflict, gathered everyone around food and expected problems to dissolve. I almost didn't go, but something told me I should. I needed to see this play out. Ariana arrived late, dressed expensively as always. She wore a new dress that probably cost $1,000, designer heels that clicked importantly across Mom's hardwood floors. She immediately launched into bragging about her new business venture. The boutique space is perfect. Prime downtown location, huge windows, exposed brick. We're signing the final lease papers this week. People around the table nodded politely. Aunt Helen asked questions about the inventory. Uncle Vincent asked about her business plan. Ariana was in her element, holding court like always, gesturing dramatically with her wine glass. Then her phone buzzed. She glanced at it and her face went completely pale. She excused herself quickly and stepped outside. Through the window, I could see her pacing frantically on Mom's porch, phone pressed to her ear. Her free hand was making agitated gestures. When she came back inside 5 minutes later, she was shaking. "I need to go. Emergency." Mom shot me a glare across the table like somehow this was my fault. I simply kept eating my potatoes, letting the silence speak for itself. That night, near midnight, someone knocked loudly on my door. Aggressive, desperate knocking that echoed through my small apartment. I knew who it was before I opened it. Ariana stood there with mascara running down her face, her expensive coat wrapped tight around her. Her hair was disheveled. She looked nothing like the polished woman from dinner. "Talia, please. I need the money. I already signed the lease. My business partner invested her life savings, her retirement, Talia. If I can't come through with my half, I'll lose everything. She'll sue me. I'll be ruined." For years she'd mocked me. Called me too emotional, too soft. Told me I'd never amount to anything. Stolen my inheritance without a second thought. Now she wanted help. "You said I wasn't responsible enough to manage Dad's money," I said quietly, standing in the doorway. "So maybe I shouldn't be responsible for fixing your mistakes either. Maybe I'm too unstable to make good decisions about lending money." "Talia, please." He grabbed my arm, her nails digging in. "I'm your sister. We're family. Doesn't that mean anything to you? You stopped being my sister when you stole from me." I pulled my arm free and stepped back. "You stopped being family when you convinced Mom I didn't deserve what Dad left me." She stood there crying for another minute, mascara streaking darker, before walking away. I closed the door and locked it. The next morning, Mom stormed into my apartment using the spare key I'd forgotten she had. She must have driven straight over from her house. "You're ruining your sister's future. How can you be so selfish? So vindictive? I didn't raise you to be cruel." "She ruined mine first," I said simply. I was making coffee and I didn't stop to face her. "Stop being dramatic." Mom's face was red with anger. "Ariana made one mistake. And you're destroying her over it. Your father would be ashamed of you. He'd be heartbroken to see you acting like this." That line was meant to hurt, and it did. It struck directly at my deepest fear, that I was disappointing Dad somehow. But I didn't let her see it. Dad left me that money for a reason. Ariana stole it. Those are facts, not drama. "You always were vindictive," Mom spat. "Even as a child you held grudges. Remember when Ariana accidentally broke your art project? You didn't speak to her for weeks. She didn't accidentally break it. She threw it in the trash and told me it was ugly. I corrected. And you made me apologize to her for being upset." It became crystal clear in that moment. To her, Ariana could burn my life down and she'd ask why I didn't hold still. I took the spare key from her hand. I think you should leave. And I need this back. She stared at me in shock, then left without another word. 3 days later the call finally came. Mr. Patterson's voice was measured, but I could hear satisfaction underneath. Talia, I have news. Everything has been confirmed. The inheritance is legally yours. All of it. The judge reviewed everything this morning. I sat down hard on my couch. All of it. Every cent. The judge reviewed the evidence and ruled that the transfer was made under false pretenses. Your father's intent was clear in the documents you provided. His handwriting, his explicit instructions, everything. He paused. And there's more. Due to fraudulent transfer, Ariana will be required to return everything she spent. My breath caught. I hadn't expected that. Even what she already used. The boutique deposits and everything. Especially what she already used. She'll have 30 days to return the funds or face further legal action, including possible criminal charges for fraud. The judge was very clear. His voice was firm. This isn't revenge, Talia. This is justice. Your father's wishes are being honored. I thanked him and hung up, then sat in silence for a long time. Justice. The word felt heavy and right and overwhelming. Dad's voice echoed in my memory. Your heart will take you further than money ever will. Within an hour my phone started ringing. Ariana called 37 times in 3 hours. I counted each one. Each call I ignored felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. My phone buzzed constantly on the table, lighting up over and over. Finally a text came through. Talia, please. I need to talk. This is serious. Please. I turned my phone face down on the table. For once she could sit with the consequences she'd created. For once her problems weren't mine to solve. For once I didn't have to be the one who bent and accommodated and sacrificed. The desperate messages kept coming throughout the evening. I'll lose everything. Please, I'm begging you. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I'll make it right. Just give me a chance. That last one almost made me respond. Almost. But I remembered her smirk in the lawyer's office. I remembered her cruel words about my stability. I remembered years of being treated like less than, like the disappointing sister, like the one who couldn't measure up. I remembered every time she'd taken credit for my work, every time she'd undermined me to make herself look better. Sorry wasn't enough. Sorry didn't change what she'd done. Sorry was just the sound of someone finally facing consequences. Mr. Patterson called me in for a final signing the following week. When I arrived at his office, Ariana was already there in the waiting room. She looked terrible. Puffy eyes, no makeup, hair pulled back messily in a ponytail. She wore jeans and a plain sweater, not her usual designer clothes. She looked like she'd been crying for days. Talia, she whispered when she saw me. Her voice cracked. I didn't mean to hurt you. Thought I was helping. Thought I knew better. I thought. You thought you'd get away with it, I said calmly, walking past her toward the conference room. There's a difference between making a mistake and planning theft. If she had apologized before losing everything, maybe I would have believed her. If she'd shown remorse when she had the power, when she held all the cards, maybe things could have been different. But desperation isn't the same as remorse. Fear of consequences isn't the same as genuine regret. Mom was there too, sitting in the corner with her arms crossed. She wore her judgmental expression, the one I'd seen directed at me my whole life. She wouldn't look at me. She just stared at the wall, radiating disapproval. Mr. Patterson cleared his throat and spread documents across his desk with practiced precision. This is the final transfer order. It restores full control of the inheritance to Talia, as originally intended by the deceased Marcus Reese. He slid the papers toward me with a pen. Once you sign, Ms. Reese, everything will be legally yours. The previous transfer will be voided entirely. Your sister will be required to return all disbursed funds within 30 days. I picked up the pen. It felt heavier than it should have. This wasn't just about money. It was about finally being seen, being valued, being taken seriously. It was about Dad's wishes being honored. I signed slowly, deliberately, making sure every letter of my name was clear and legible. Ariana buried her face in her hands. Her shoulders shook with silent crying. Mom muttered under her breath, "This isn't fair. This isn't right. You're punishing her for trying to help." But for once, fairness wasn't their decision to make. For once the law was on my side. For once being soft didn't mean being weak. Mr. Patterson stamped the documents officially with a heavy seal. Congratulations, Ms. Reese. Justice has been served. He smiled slightly and I knew he'd wanted this outcome all along. He'd seen through Ariana's manipulation from the start. I turned to face Ariana directly. She looked up at me with red, swollen eyes. This was my moment to say everything I'd held back for years. Everything I'd swallowed and suppressed and buried deep. You didn't take my inheritance because I wasn't ready. You didn't take it to protect Dad's legacy. I kept my voice steady and clear. You took it because you never believed I'd become someone you'd have to respect. You thought I'd always be less than you. Weaker. Easier to control. The little sister who never fought back. Ariana opened her mouth but no words came out. What could she say? We both knew it was true. Years of subtle put-downs, of being second choice, of my achievements being minimized while hers were celebrated. It all came down to this moment. I proved you wrong, I said simply. I stood up for myself. I fought for what was mine. And I won. She didn't argue. She couldn't. The evidence was literally signed and stamped on the desk between us. Mom stood up abruptly and left the room without a word. She couldn't face the truth either. Couldn't admit that she'd enabled Ariana's cruelty for decades. The door clicked shut behind her. Mr. Patterson explained the next steps with professional courtesy, but his tone left no room for negotiation. Ms. Ariana Reese, you have 30 days to return all funds withdrawn from the inheritance account. That includes the business deposits, personal expenditures, and any gifts or transfers made to third parties. Ariana's face went white. Her hands trembled on the table. But I've already spent most of it. The boutique lease, the deposits, the inventory orders, the contractors. It's all gone. I've committed to contracts. You'll need to find a way to return those funds, Mr. Patterson said firmly. Sell assets, arrange payment plans with creditors, liquidate investments, whatever is necessary. If you fail to comply, further legal action will be taken, including possible criminal prosecution for fraud. Her business was gone before it even started. Her credit would be ruined. Her reputation in our social circle? Completely shaken. Everything she'd built on stolen money was collapsing like a house of cards. Mom had come back into the room. She glared at me like I was the villain in this story. But villains don't return what's been stolen from them. They don't fight for justice. Thieves do what Ariana did. And I was just taking back what was rightfully mine, what Dad had explicitly wanted me to have. 2 weeks later, I moved into a new apartment across town. It was bright, spacious, and filled with windows that let in morning sunlight. Real hardwood floors, updated kitchen, a bedroom big enough for an actual bed and dresser. I bought actual furniture instead of second-hand pieces from yard sales. I hung my own artwork on the walls, paintings I'd created over the years that I'd never had space to display properly. I realized something while unpacking boxes. The money mattered less than I thought it would. What mattered was freedom from people who saw me as lesser, weaker, undeserving. Freedom from constantly proving myself to people who would never see my worth no matter what I accomplished. I blocked Mom's number after she left another voicemail about family loyalty and forgiveness. Your sister made a mistake. We all make mistakes. When are you going to move past this? But it wasn't a mistake. It was a choice. A calculated, deliberate choice. I kept Ariana's contact unblocked but muted all notifications. Maybe someday we could rebuild something. But that day wasn't today. And I wasn't going to force it or rush it or pretend everything was fine just to make other people comfortable. This apartment felt like the beginning of something new. A life built on my own terms with my own choices, funded by what my father wanted me to have. A month passed. Through Aunt Helen I heard updates about Ariana. She'd moved back into our childhood home with Mom. She couldn't afford her apartment anymore after breaking the lease. Her business partner had sued her for the lost investment, $30,000 that the woman had saved for years. Friends who had circled around her before, admiring her success and sophistication, had quietly drifted away. For the first time in her life she was being treated the way she'd treated me for years. Disposable. Conditional. Worth less than she thought she was. Part of me felt sad about it. We'd been close once when we were very young before competition and comparison poisoned everything between us. But mostly I felt relieved. The weight of her judgment, her control, her constant belittling, All of it was gone. I could finally breathe without wondering if I was disappointing someone. I could make choices without second-guessing whether I was good enough, smart enough, stable enough. Aunt Helen asked if I wanted to reach out to Ariana during one of our coffee meetings. She's struggling, honey. Really struggling. Maybe you could. I said maybe eventually. But not yet. Some wounds need time to heal before you can even think about reconciliation. I used part of my inheritance to start something Dad had always encouraged. A scholarship fund for young women pursuing creative careers. Art, writing, music, dance, theater, anything that required courage to follow instead of a safe, traditional path. Anything that required heart over practicality. It was called the Marcus Reese Creative Futures Fund, named after my father. The application asked about passion, not just grades. About dreams, not just achievements. The first year we gave scholarships to 5 young women. Their thank you letters made me cry real grateful tears. They reminded me why this mattered, why Dad's gift needed to create something bigger than just my own security. My revenge wasn't taking anything from Ariana. It was becoming everything she said I'd never be. Successful. Independent. Strong. Respected. And most importantly, genuinely happy. I was using Dad's gift exactly how he'd hoped, to build something meaningful. Last week, Mr. Patterson forwarded me a message. Ariana had asked through her lawyer if I'd reconsider sharing the inheritance with her, now that some time had passed. She promised she'd changed, learned her lesson, understood her mistakes. He said she was in therapy now, working on herself. I read the message twice, then simply replied, no. I earned my peace. I sent it and closed my laptop. Outside my window, the city glowed with evening lights. My phone buzzed with a notification about the scholarship fund. 3 new applications had come in. I smiled. This was the life Dad wanted for me all along. Not just financial security, but the freedom to be myself, to follow my heart, to help others do the same. The soft sister had found her strength. And it felt like coming home.